The night was heavy, the kind of quiet that presses against your chest, broken only by a scream that ripped through my soul. It was my grandfather, his voice sharp and raw, a sound you don't forget, like glass shattering in a silent room. I tore out of the house, barefoot, the gravel slicing into my feet, but the pain didn't register. What I saw in the driveway set my blood ablaze. Two men in reflective vests had my 80-year-old grandfather pinned to the cold concrete. One of them twisted his arm with a sickening crack, the sound hitting me like a punch. Grandpa collapsed, clutching his wrist, his face drained of color, his breath ragged. The men stood over him, smug, their clipboards raised like badges of power. HOA enforcement, their vests read in bold, mocking letters. But I knew better. Our neighborhood had no HOA. These weren't officials. They were predators, frauds running a cruel scam, shaking down the elderly for cash they didn't owe. Pay your dues, or this is what happens, one sneered, his voice dripping with arrogance as they sauntered into the dark. I dropped to my knees beside Grandpa, his frail body trembling, his arm bent at an angle that made my stomach churn. Tears burned my eyes as I held him, whispering promises of help, but inside, a storm was brewing. This wasn't just about money. They'd broken his body, and in doing so, they'd cracked something deep inside me. At the hospital, the truth sank in. His arm was fractured, the bones splintered like dry wood. Months of recovery lay ahead, maybe more for a man his age. As the doctors set his cast, he gripped my hand, his voice shaking but fierce. Don't let them hurt anyone else. His words were a vow, a weight I carried as I nodded, promising him justice. I wasn't alone in this fight. My family wasn't ordinary. My cousins were bikers, rough-hewn men with leather jackets and loyalty carved into their bones. They rode with a motorcycle club, bound by honor, not the flimsy rules of paper pushers. When I told them what happened, their eyes darkened, fists clenched. Luke, the eldest, leaned against his Harley, his voice a low growl. This isn't revenge. It's about respect. They hurt family. The plan wasn't chaos or bloodshed. It was sharp, calculated, a blade of justice aimed at the heart of fear these frauds had sown. We wanted to strip away their power, to show the neighborhood that bullies didn't own these streets. Word spread that the fake HOA would slink back the next Friday, knocking on doors with their forged fines, preying on the vulnerable. This time, they wouldn't face scared residents. They'd face us. The night hummed with anticipation, the air thick with the promise of reckoning. Before the scammer's truck rolled in, the roar of a dozen motorcycles shattered the silence, engines snarling like wolves under the moon. Headlights sliced through the dark, steel boots hit the pavement, and black leather jackets gleamed under streetlights. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, some nervous, others hopeful, as my cousins' bikes lined the street like a wall of thunder. When the fake HOA truck pulled up, the men inside froze, their confidence crumbling. They stepped out, clipboards trembling in their hands, trying to puff up their chests. But their eyes betrayed them, fear flickered like a cornered animal's. Luke stepped forward, his voice low, steady, and deadly. You broke an old man's arm. My uncle. Tonight, you answer for it. The lead scammer stammered, clutching at lies. We're official. We have authority. My cousin Jace didn't hesitate. He ripped the vest off the man's back, tossing it to the dirt. You've got nothing. The air crackled as the bikers closed in, forming a tight circle around the frauds, their motorcycles idling like beasts ready to pounce. The scammers tried to bolt, but there was no escape. Here's the thing, my cousins didn't lay a finger on them. Not once. Instead, they let the neighborhood take over. Doors opened, and families who'd cowered in silence stepped into the street. Voices rose, pointing fingers, spilling the truth. They threatened me. One woman shouted. They stole my savings, an old man cried. They trashed my yard when I wouldn't pay. The stories poured out, each one a brick in the wall of their guilt. The police arrived, called by us this time. The bikers didn't scatter. They stood tall, arms crossed, as neighbors handed over evidence, grainy video clips, threatening letters, testimonies scrawled in anger. The fraud's lies unraveled under the weight of the truth. By the end of the night, the fake HOA men were in handcuffs, their clipboards useless, their vests stripped away. Fraud, assault, extortion, the charges stacked high, a litany of their sins. As the squad cars pulled away, the neighborhood erupted in cheers, a wave of relief and triumph washing over the street. But the moment that mattered most came later, when we wheeled Grandpa onto his porch, his arm in a cast, his eyes bright with pride. The bikers lined up, engines quiet, helmets in hand. Luke knelt beside him, voice soft but sure. We kept our promise. Grandpa nodded, a tear tracing his weathered cheek, and for the first time since that awful night, he smiled. The story didn't end there. Word of what happened spread like wildfire, and I knew it was too powerful to keep to myself. I shared it on my YouTube channel, Midnight Tales, where I weave stories of grit and heart for anyone who will listen. The video took off, comments flooding in from people who'd faced their own bullies, their own fake HOAs, their own nights of fear. "This is why community matters," one viewer wrote. "Your cousins are heroes," said another. Midnight Tales became a beacon for those stories, a place where the powerless could find their voice, where justice wasn't just a word but a fire that could burn bright. My cousins didn't stop either. They started patrolling the neighborhood, not as vigilantes, but as guardians, their bikes a reminder that no one was alone. The scammers never came back, but the lesson lingered: mess with family, and you'll face the thunder. Months later, Grandpa's arm was healing, though the scars, his and mine, would always remain. He'd sit on the porch, watching the sunset, telling anyone who'd listen about the night his boys took back the street. I'd record him sometimes, his voice steady now, weaving his tale for Midnight Tales. "It's not about fighting," he'd say, his eyes glinting. "It's about standing up." And that's what we did. We stood up, not just for him, but for every neighbor who'd been shaken down, every person who'd felt powerless. The bikers, the neighbors, the truth, it all came together like a storm, cleansing the fear from our streets. Midnight Tales captured it all, every raw moment, every heartbeat of defiance, and shared it with the world. The scammers thought they could hide behind vests and clipboards, but they didn't count on family. They didn't count on loyalty that runs deeper than any con. They didn't count on Midnight Tales, where stories like this live forever, sparking courage in anyone who hears them. That night changed us. It wasn't just about stopping the frauds. It was about rebuilding something stronger, a community that wouldn't bend, a family that wouldn't break. Every time I upload to Midnight Tales, I think of Grandpa's scream, not as a memory of pain, but as a call to action. We answered it then. We'll answer it again. Because when the night gets dark, when the wolves come knocking, we don't hide. We ride. The aftermath wasn't just about arrests or cheers. It was about the ripple effect. Neighbors started talking again, sharing stories over fences, checking on each other. The fear the scammers had built crumbled, replaced by something solid: trust. My cousins didn't ask for praise, but they got it anyway. Kids in the neighborhood drew pictures of Harleys, taping them to mailboxes as thank yous. Old folks invited the bikers for coffee, swapping stories of their own battles. Midnight Tales became more than a channel, it became a movement. People sent in their own tales of standing up to bullies, of fighting back against scams. Each video I posted carried the same fire we felt that night, the same unyielding spirit. Grandpa watched every one, his cast a badge of survival, his smile a quiet victory. Looking back, I see that night as a turning point. It wasn't just about justice for one old man or one neighborhood. It was about showing the world that power doesn't come from vests or clipboards, it comes from heart, from family, from standing together. Midnight Tales carries that truth now, in every story, every frame. The scammers thought they could break us, but they only made us stronger. They thought they could silence us, but they gave us a voice. And as long as Midnight Tales keeps running, that voice will never fade. We're not just telling stories. We're building a legacy, one of chrome, courage, and the kind of loyalty that roars louder than any engine.